like I was saying in my other video before YouTube cut it off, I don't know why, but they don't seem to process all the way. Um, Back in my time, there were a lot of things you just didn't do, but back then your family could really, put it on you if you were doing stuff that you had no business doing. I didn't get spanked a lot, but that option was always there, and it was not just by my parents. If I was staying with my grandma, I did something wrong, I could get spanked by my grandma, my auntie. I mean, the list went on and on. And back then you could be spanked in school, so you had those extra incentives to want to follow the rules. But nowadays it's like the government has made it so hard for parents to be parents to their own kids, because they learn in school, if somebody's doing something, you can call Child Protective Services. But they don't explain to these children the ramifications of when they call Child Protective Services, what they're going to go through. A lot of children, they're not abused. They have just become so spoiled to the point that if somebody tries to tell them something, then they figure, oh well, I'll call such and such and you'll get in trouble, just to be vindictive, or try and get back at their parents. But there are children that are abused. Some parents do take it over and beyond the call, but a lot of parents don't. They're just trying to raise their kids and make them productive people in society. And now you have the government stepping in and telling you how to raise your kids. Can't do this, can't do that. You do this, you do that, you're breaking laws. You can't spank your kids in public. You can't spank your kids at home. If your kids come back and say, hey, so-and-so spanked me last night, teachers have to report that as child abuse. So, it's just gotten to the point where, as parents, really, what can you do? That talking stuff, it doesn't work for every kid. Timeout, that, it doesn't work for all kids. Some kids are a lot more headstrong and determined, that they don't care about that. And as your children get older, if they have no set fear of consequences, then they just tend to run all over the place. And I was saying in my other video that society tends to get involved when your children go out in public and they become a nuisance to other people. But as long as they're just being a nuisance to you, hey, it's just something that as parents have to deal with. And I don't think that is right. I think that the government should cut parents slack. We're just trying to raise our kids. My 17-year-old thinks that, she's like Superwoman or something, that, no matter what she does, there's no price that she's going to have to pay. That she can just do whatever she pleases, and in the end, I don't know who she thinks is going to come bail her out, but somebody will come to her rescue. That's not the case. And my friends, they used to laugh about that, when their kids would say stuff like, oh, you do that, I'm going to call Child Protective Services. Okay, well, guess what? You're the one that leaves, not me. I'll still be at home. They'll pack you up and take you to a nice little shelter. So, really think about what you're doing before you do it. I don't know. A lot of parents, they get to that point. I think, they get so frustrated with the fact that they can't raise their kids till it's like, you know what? Do whatever. Do whatever you got to do. I am not strict on my kids, but yeah, I do have my point. It's like, you either do what I say or you get out. Don't care how old you are, in Texas, the law is 17. 17 is when you can legally put your kids out and have no consequences for it. But, a lot of these kids become unruly at the age of 11 and 12. You know what I'm saying? They are set to do whatever they want to do. I'm just going to do it. You can't do anything about it. And really, as parents, your hands are kind of tied, My my mother used to tell me that if you don't have a strong moral foundation set in your children by the age of 5, you can pretty much give it up, because once they get into school and other kids start molding them and teachers and everybody else starts shaping them, if those moral factors, our fibers, aren't already put together, by the time they're older, it's just like I said, my daughter's 17 and she's not like super unruly. She's just very headstrong. Like, oh, well, I know everything type thing. Knows everything, knows nothing. So, she's not out committing serious crimes. That was the first time that she had ever had to go to court, but the car she was riding with had alcohol in it. So, you know, that's a crime in itself. So, she had to be punished. I don't think her punishment was severe, but, hey, that's just me. I'm just the mom. What do I know? These kids are just ticking time bombs, They just walk around with thinking they got the world in the palm of their hands, and they don't know nothing. 14 and I want to have a baby. That just adds to the bigger problem, because you're a baby trying to have a baby and raise a baby, and you don't know nothing about life yourself. I was 19 when I had my daughter, and I still didn't know anything. So I could just imagine being 14 trying to have a kid. Wouldn't have worked out for me anyway, because my mother probably would have killed me the minute I said, I was pregnant. But she used to threaten me all the time just about having sex. And that didn't stop until I was like 18. That's probably why I ended up having a baby at 19. But, yeah, there was a set fear I had for my parents that, you break the rules, it would be severe consequences. It wouldn't be slaps on the wrist, But like I said, I came back and stayed with my mom when she got sick. And at that time, I was like, wow, she passed away 2 years ago. But I was like 35. And if I went somewhere, she would tell me, you know what, you need to be home by 1. I'm like, wow, I'm 36 now. 25, I could kind of tinker around with it, But 35, I'm like, really? Are you serious? She's like, yeah, you're not home by that time, and I lock the doors, you're out for the night. Don't come home. That was her thing. You're not home by a certain time, just don't come home. And we knew then, when she said don't come home, that meant you weren't coming home, period. Like, your stuff, you could come the next day and pack your stuff, because you were getting out. So, she was a very strong lady. I mean, the morals that she installed in me, I'm actually thankful for. I mean, even my grandmother, their aunties, uncles, they all had a major part in raising me and the way that I feel about certain things. But I think the government does overstep its boundaries when it comes to raising kids, because they're not dealing with those kids on a day-to-day basis. You are. And, I mean, your children when they're playing you, or, pushing your buttons or pushing the limits. So, it's not fair for them to step in and tell you how to raise your kids, because each child is different. And maybe their kid operates one way, but your kid may operate completely different. So, I don't know what's going on with my YouTube, but it usually cuts me off short. So if I'm talking about something and then it just stops, it's because YouTube has politely shut off my, I don't know, when it uploads, it just uploads to a certain time frame and then it just stops. So I guess you have to let it run forever and then shut it off so it publishes the whole thing. But yeah, those are my views. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I'm not gonna hurt my children. I love them, but there has to be some limit, some boundary, something, because anything that lives without laws, becomes wild and crazy. And